The Warri River flowed next to Ovwian, a village nestled in the heart of Africa. This river was more than just a body of water. It was the lifeblood of the village, a silent witness to the passage of time and the unfolding of countless stories. It saw everything, the good times and the bad times of the village. The river had been there through the laughter of children playing on its banks, the songs of women washing clothes, and the quiet moments of reflection by the elders. Ovwian, a lively place, was ruled by the king, Ovie. The marketplace buzzed with activity, the air filled with the scent of spices and the sound of haggling. People moved about with purpose, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of the river. His palace, big and powerful, stood tall. It was a symbol of strength and authority, a place where decisions that shaped the future of Ovwian were made. The palace, with its grand architecture and cultural elements, was a testament to the rich heritage of the village. But something bad was happening. A sense of unease had begun to creep into the hearts of the villagers. Ominous clouds gathered over the village, casting long shadows and creating an atmosphere of tension. Secrets went through the trees, carried by the wind from the river. Whispers of discontent and fear floated on the breeze, rustling the leaves and stirring the waters of the Warri River. The people of Ovwian listened to Ovie. They gathered in the village square, their faces turned towards their leader, hanging on his every word. Ovie's voice was strong and commanding, but there was an undercurrent of something else, something that made the villagers uneasy. They looked up to him, and their lives depended on what he said. His decisions affected every aspect of their lives, from the crops they planted to the festivals they celebrated. Ovie was their guide, their protector, and their judge, but they were also afraid of him. There was a fear that lurked beneath their respect, a fear born of the unknown. Ovie was a man of many secrets, and the villagers could sense that there was more to him than met the eye. Ovie, though respected, was mysterious. His eyes held a depth that few could fathom, and his expression often seemed distant, as if he were lost in thoughts of a time long past. He had secrets from his past, hidden deep down. These secrets weighed heavily on him, shaping his actions and decisions. The villagers often wondered what burdens their leader carried, what memories haunted his dreams. The old people talked about an old story, a prophecy. It was a tale passed down through generations, a warning of a time when the village would face great peril. The elders spoke in hushed tones, their voices filled with a mix of fear and reverence. It said something bad would happen to Ovwian. The prophecy foretold of a darkness that would descend upon the village, a darkness that would be brought about by the actions of their leader. This bad thing would come from Ovie's own choices, and it would hurt everyone. The villagers feared the prophecy, but they also feared the man who held their fate in his hands. Ovie's decisions were a double-edged sword, capable of bringing both prosperity and ruin. As the sun went down, making long shadows over Ovwian, the villagers went inside their homes. The day gave way to night, and with it came a sense of foreboding. The long shadows seemed to stretch out like fingers, reaching into the hearts of the villagers and filling them with dread. The night was full of sounds from the forest. The usual symphony of the night creatures played on, a familiar yet eerie backdrop to the villagers' unease. Crickets chirped, frogs croaked, and far away an animal howled. These sounds, once comforting, now seemed to carry a note of warning, a reminder of the prophecy that loomed over them. But tonight a new sound broke the quiet. It was a sound unlike any the villagers had heard before, a sound that sent shivers down their spines and made their hearts race. A sound that would change Ovwian forever. The villagers knew that this was the beginning of something momentous, something that would alter the course of their lives and the fate of their beloved village. It was early in the night, and the village of Ovwian was cloaked in an unsettling silence. The usual sounds of nocturnal creatures were absent, as if they too were wary of the ominous presence in the sky. The moon, a scary red color, hung in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. It was a blood moon, a rare and unsettling phenomenon that seemed to foretell doom. The crimson light made Ovwian look strange, like something bad was about to happen. Shadows stretched and twisted, creating ghostly figures that danced on the walls of the huts. Ovie, hidden in the shadows, stood at the edge of the forest. His heart beat fast, each thump echoing in his ears like a drum. He knew what he had to do, but fear gripped him tightly. He held a sharp, shiny knife, its blade reflecting the red moonlight. This knife was not just a tool, it was a symbol of the dark task that lay ahead. This knife would soon be covered in blood, a grim reminder of the night's events. Ovie's grip tightened as he steeled himself for what was to come. Someone came out of the darkness. Ejiro, Ovie's trusted friend, or so he had thought, but you can't always trust people. Ejiro's eyes, once filled with warmth, now held a cold, calculating look. He had become dangerous because he knew too much. They met in secret, their voices low and tense. The air was thick with unspoken words and hidden agendas. Ejiro's knowledge had made him a liability, and Ovie knew there was no turning back. They talked angrily, whispering so no one could hear. Accusations flew and tempers flared. The bond of friendship that once held them together was now shattered. It was quick and violent, a sudden explosion of pent-up rage and fear. The struggle was brief but intense, a flurry of movement in the moonlit night. Ejiro wasn't ready and didn't have a chance. His eyes widened in shock as Ovie's knife found its mark. The betrayal was swift and merciless. Ovie watched as Ejiro died, his eyes showing fear and sadness. The weight of his actions pressed down on him and he felt a pang of regret. Ejiro's body lay at Ovie's feet. It was done. The deed was irreversible and the consequences would follow him forever. Ovie, his hands shaking, cleaned the knife and disappeared back into the shadows. The blood moon watched silently, a witness to the night's dark events. The red moon, now a witness to his bad deed, kept shining its strange light on Ovwian. The village would wake to a new day, unaware of the tragedy that had unfolded under the blood moon. Days became weeks. The villagers talked about Ejiro being gone. Ovie pretended to be worried, but the gods saw everything. The rain stopped. The Warri River, once full of life, became very small. Plants died, everything smelled bad. The gods were angry, and they showed it by making Ovwian suffer. Then the children started getting sick. One by one they died from a strange sickness. Mothers cried all over the village. Ovie, feeling guilty and afraid, tried to make the gods happy with gifts. But the gods didn't listen, they wanted justice. Inside the palace everyone was afraid. Ovie's wives, once happy, now didn't trust each other. They whispered about bad luck and curses. Ovie, thinking about his bad actions, became quiet and lonely. He was suspicious of everyone. He saw Ejiro's ghost everywhere. He saw Ejiro's eyes in every shadow and heard his last breaths in the sounds of the leaves. When he slept, he had bad dreams that made him sweat. He felt very guilty and sad. Ovie, once strong, was now trapped in his own palace, trapped by his guilty conscience. Omowumi, Ovie's favorite wife, was very beautiful. Her beauty was renowned throughout the kingdom, and her presence brought joy and peace to the palace. She was not just a pretty face, her wisdom and kindness made her beloved by all. The other wives admired her, and the villagers often spoke of her grace and charm, but she started to go crazy. It began with small, unnoticeable changes. She would forget simple things like where she placed her jewelry or the names of the palace servants. Gradually, her behavior became more erratic. She would talk to herself, muttering incoherent words, and her once bright eyes grew dim with confusion. She saw Ejiro's face in the river and heard his voice in the cricket sounds. Ejiro, her long-lost brother, had disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances. The river, which once brought her solace, now became a source of torment. She would spend hours by its banks, staring into the water, searching for answers that eluded her. She used to laugh and make everyone happy, but now she just made scary sounds. Her laughter, once a melody that filled the palace with joy, turned into eerie, unsettling noises. The children who once flocked to her side now ran away in fear. Her transformation was heartbreaking to witness.
She walked around the palace at night, talking to herself, her eyes looking lost. The nights were the worst. She would wander the halls, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She spoke to shadows, reliving memories of happier times, and her eyes, once full of life, now seemed empty and haunted.
The other wives saw Omowumi going crazy and became very afraid. They whispered among themselves, sharing their fears and anxieties. They had always looked up to her, and seeing her in such a state made them question their own sanity. They wondered if they too would fall victim to the same madness. They thought they would be next. The fear spread like wildfire. The palace, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. The wives huddled together, seeking comfort in each other's presence, but the fear was palpable. They avoided Omowumi, afraid that her madness might be contagious. The palace, once a beautiful and happy place, became scary. The vibrant colors of the walls seemed to fade, and the once lively gardens now felt desolate. The air was thick with tension, and every creak and whisper seemed to carry a sense of impending doom. Everyone was tense and suspicious, and they felt that something very bad was going to happen. The villagers, who once looked up to the palace as a symbol of hope and prosperity, now viewed it with suspicion. Rumors spread, and the sense of unease grew. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over the entire kingdom, and no one knew how to dispel it.
Months after slaying Ejiro, Ovie, the king of Ovwian, found himself ensnared by an unseen force. Paralyzed, he laid in his chamber, haunted by the ghost of his decision. The weight of his crown felt heavier, each breath a reminder of the bloodshed. The glory turned to chains. Regret consumed him. He was dethroned. The final words of Ovie, the king of Ovwian. I was once revered, a ruler draped in power, but in a moment of madness, I plunged a knife into Ejiro's heart. Now stripped of my crown, paralyzed by regret, I fade into shadows. My reign, a tragic echo of betrayal. When leaders act unjustly, the consequences ripple through society. The weight of their choices burdens the innocent, and suffering becomes the norm. Ultimately, justice cannot be evaded. The seeds of our actions will sprout. The truth remains, we will reap what we sow, for every decision carries its own reckoning.